Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video on a game I beat last year, and it was a game that was actually released last year in 2021, and it's none other than Wildermyth for the PC. I played this via Steam, and as of now it's only available on Steam, but I believe it'll be released in the future for the Nintendo Switch and other systems. And this is a fantastic, it's one of those indie darling type of stories. The game was developed by a brand new indie studio and has taken the Steam by storm in a way. There are tens of thousands of overwhelmingly positive reviews for this game, and for a good reason. I think this is a very well put together and thought after strategy RPG made by a very small team of indie developers. So a very pleasant surprise for me personally. I was surprised by how well crafted this game was, considering the indie nature of the game. But essentially what Wildermyth is a grid, strategy, turn-based RPG, indie RPG that has a very unique art style, and most importantly a very unique way of storytelling in terms of the story itself of the game, with some procedurally generated elements that are very cool. And I think the component that really drove it home for me is the customization on the characters that you can either create, or you can have the computer or AI randomly generate the characters for you. The characters become a very strong point in this game, because your characters remain with you from the beginning of the game all the way to till the end of the game. So I'll expand that a little bit more in the gameplay section. But story-wise, Wildermyth actually offers several campaign modes, if you will. The first one, kind of like the main story, is divided in 3 chapters, but there are more campaigns that comprise of 4 and either 4 or 5 chapters, I believe. I haven't beaten every single campaign, but I've beaten kind of like the main one. And in each one of them, the story from a larger picture point of view, it's very simple. It's basically good versus evil. You're trying to eliminate the invasion of this bad monsters that are trying to invade the land where you live. So the endearing part of this game is that you take commoners, common people, from their early age, from an early age. They're basically teenagers or young adults, and you take them from being just common people that fight these invasions of monsters, and as you progress through the game, you grow in your status. You grow from being a normal person to like a legendary hero, which is pretty cool. And the game has all these elements that where you see your character's age, for example, and it's just very cool because the game has a lot of customization, and the story is basically told from a kind of like a comic book type of deal. You see all these frames with your characters, the exact way that you customize them. So it's kind of cool. The game has a tons of options for skin colors, hairstyles, hair colors, and all that. So you can really go all out in creating your characters, and then you see them aging through the different campaigns, which is something really cool. But the stories, they vary from depending on the campaign that you choose, but they're generally good versus evil. And to throw more into the mix, the game does allow you to have choices during the stories. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Sometimes some of your characters have to make really tough decisions. As you progress through the story, you can recruit more characters. You can also have a dynamic where your characters can have kids. Your characters can develop characteristics or personalities such as rivalry between your own party members, which is kind of cool to see them being competitive against each other in a positive way, obviously for your party, and things like that. Love relationships and things like that. So a lot of different things that are going on at the same time in terms of the story. Graphically, the game looks kind of like a paper crafted type of game. The animations are super simplistic, obviously, in this game. The character I guess style. The art style reminds me a little bit of Doug, that cartoon from the '90s, which is not among my favorites. The two dots for the eyes, doesn't look that good in my opinion. But other than that, the art style, it's very colorful, and it really gives that impression of you're playing an old school tabletop RPG with your friends. They kind of look like static figures, and it just has like this very cool artsy and crafty feel to it, which is pretty cool. And you can't expect a whole lot being an indie game, obviously, but the art direction, again, it's very appropriate for the game and very well done in my opinion, in terms of both the characters and the enemies, and also the environments, which are very varied. You play in forests, temples, caves, and things of that nature. A lot of different variations in the environment, which is pretty cool. Soundtrack, the game surprisingly has a very, very good soundtrack, kind of like that medieval theme and soundtrack. I know the title screen is a very calming and a pretty cool song. So the game has a very appropriate soundtrack. No voice acting, unsurprisingly. This is an indie game, so, and of course, you create your own characters, so the game is silent in that regard. But other than that, the soundtrack itself, it's pretty solid for being an indie game. And finally, the gameplay, which I kind of already talked a little bit about. The cool thing is the procedurally generated, story components of the game. The gameplay itself, it's a turn-based strategy RPG. Think of it as the game, having elements from like the XCOM games, for example, where you can position your characters, you can take cover, you can have like a foresight type of, turn, protecting characters that are moving and things of that nature. So very interesting thematic. Like the game has a simplistic approach, where the game is somewhat simple to grasp in terms of the mechanics, but it can become hard to master, especially when you get into the later chapters and later campaigns. The enemies get very strong. And speaking of the enemies getting stronger, there is some sort of like card deck component to it, where every time you beat a level, enemies can get stronger. And you also can spend points to reduce the card decking building of the enemies. So there's this like separate kind of like card deck game that you play against the enemies at the end of each level, where you can try and reduce their strategies as they're forming to face that final battle. Because every level has a couple of small battles, and everything ends up in this like bigger battle towards the end. So the game can be very difficult. But for the most part, I found it to be fair under the normal difficulty. Not overly hard, but the later missions can definitely make you sweat a little bit in terms of placing your strategy and whatnot. The game has like 3 different classes or styles. You have your typical fighter, sword and shield, close combat. They can be your tank character, if you will. You also have the archers, I guess, use a bow or a crossbow, which are good for long range attacks. And then you have your mages, which are, in this game, it's a very interesting take on the like mage, on your typical mage, I guess, class. You don't actually like use fire or electricity directly, but you possess elements in the environment, such as, like, for example, a rock. And once you possess the rock, you can split the rock or make it explode so that debris can damage the enemies. So you can like possess, like, for example, trees, and then you can make them explode, and the splinters, they hurt the enemies and things of that nature. So a very interesting take on the wizard slash mage class, which is not what your typical tabletop RPG offers, and I appreciated that in this game. So the game has this very self-contained 3 different classes, but the 3 different classes offer a lot of variety in terms of gameplay, combined with your typical elements where you can upgrade your weapons. You can upgrade your armor that you're wearing. You can hold items that help you gain strength or status elements and things of that nature. So there's a lot of added elements that add to the strategy and how you build your party and party members. And as I mentioned before, one of the most interesting things about this game is how your characters age as you progress through the game. You start seeing them as young adults or maybe even teenagers, and by the end of the game, towards the end of the campaign, some characters may even die of old age, which is kind of interesting. Or you can you have the option where if you beat the campaign, you can send your characters to a legendary mode where you can reuse them for future campaigns. They become kind of like this legendary hero, and then you can use your favorite characters from old, which is pretty cool. And then of course you can have like kids, for example, in this game, another component that just adds more depth to it. You can recruit members, and it's just a fun overall game because you have this overall map where you can try to conquer different areas. You can try and liberate different areas from enemies and so forth. There's a micromanagement component to the overworld map, where you're trying to have the enemy not invade too many towns, and at the same time you're trying to recruit people. You're trying to get resources to upgrade weapons. You're trying to get resources to gain points to reduce the card decking game against the enemies. So you're going to have to do a lot of micromanagement. You also have the option to split your parties so that a small group of your party can be doing, for example, an attack on this town in the map here, and your other party members can be, for example, gathering resources in another part of the map. So besides the strategy RPG element, which is the main bread and butter of the game, there are a lot of other micromanagement components that make up for a very interesting package. The overall package is very interesting, and I have to say that for me personally, it was a pleasant surprise of 2021. So with that being said, Wildermyth, if you guys are into strategy RPGs, I highly recommend you try this game out. It's a quote-unquote budget title. I think it's the MSRP is like $25, and it goes on sale every now and then, through Steam sales. So it's a no-brainer. If you guys are into strategy RPGs, make sure you try Wildermyth. Don't let the indie nature of the game, steer you away from this wonderful and interesting and unique game. Definitely a surprise of 2021 for me. So that's it for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.